Welcome to the 24 Flix Entertainment Podcast. Get the latest in entertainment news. Listen to exciting and powerful interviews from artists, actors, directors, writers, comedians, and much, much more. Introducing your host for the show, Marty Jean-Louis.
Thank you so much. I am so excited. Welcome to the 24 Flix Entertainment Podcast. I am beyond excited to be interviewing an Emmy Award winner. He's also a good friend of mine. So, Steph, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Marty. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We're going to get to know you today. So this time is all about getting to know who you are and what you've done. So let me start in the beginning. Where did you find your voice? At what age?
Oh my gosh. I think my mom, from what I heard, I don't remember that, but I was something like 3.5 or 4 years old when they recorded my voice the first time, and it was a Christmas song. So I was a very young kid when I started singing. It's something that started very young for me.
Wow, 3 or 4. That's pretty young, and you were just basically singing before you could really talk properly.
Well, you could say that. You could say. I don't know. You know, it's something. Music is part of your DNA, right? You either want to do this or not. And Mom, I remember that Grandma would say that I would crawl to the piano because she had this huge piano, and so I would try to make music. Of course, it didn't make any sense, but I liked music at a young age. I liked the sound of music. Yeah.
So it's fair to say that music runs in the family.
I would say so because my grandma had an operatic voice, and I had. We still have those, and we have records. Probably no one remember those. They're 78 thick. You know, they call the 78 records, and I had my great uncle. Some of them are great uncles that actually recorded. They had records, and they were opera singers, and some of them did voiceover in movies in the 40s when the actor couldn't sing. So I guess it obviously it goes beyond like during my grandma. It skipped a generation though, because my mom does sing in church and she does the choir, but it was more her parents, her mom and her uncles.
Okay. Now, as you were growing up, at what point did you realize, you know what, I want to do this for the rest of my life?
It's something interesting. You know, I always say that same thing when people ask me. When a younger singer comes to me and says, "Do you think I should be a singer?" I say, well, if you have to think about it, then maybe you shouldn't, right? Because it's not something you think about, you know. It's something that you think that you just know. So I knew I was going to sing, you know. Of course, it's something that I knew you know. But and then things unfold, right? So you're drawn with you're always drawn by your passion somehow.
Right, absolutely. And I understand you also play instruments. What instruments do you play, and at what point did you start learning it?
I play piano. I started playing against my will, though. My mom wanted me to learn the piano when I was a young teenager, and so I'm glad I still did it because I can write music because of it today. So I would say about 10 years old.
Okay. And when you started growing up, you had someone who was a big influence in your life. Who is that?
I think you know, it kind of sounds funny, but I think Grandma was probably one of the most important influence because of the music connection we had. and she was my official babysitter. So, so I loved to go to Grandma because we would sing together, songs from, either South Pacific at the time. She liked the Broadway. She liked the Rodgers and Hammerstein. So she anchored me in this type of music early on. So so the baggage I have in music, a lot comes from the time spent with Grandma. So, and she had a long life. Grandma died just a couple of years ago. She died she was 98 years old. So you can say music kept her alive a longer time.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, when you were a teenager, you had to fight. Did you have to fight and struggle before you got discovered?
Yeah, I did. I mean, because it's interesting. There's always an inner conflict in me, I find, and I think it's probably in most people. What I mean by that is being artistic, you are very introverted, and then at the same time, there's a part of you that wants to express and that wants to do things to put it out there. So there's always a conflict. So, but in school, I was very shy. I was a skinny guy, left in the corner. I didn't have that many friends, and bullied a bit as a kid. But I always say the drive from anybody comes from within. You just never know. It's why we can never judge anybody. You never know what's in the heart of people, what's in their passion, because people can surprise you.
Mm-hmm. Now, who discovered you, and how did that happen? Because I've heard the story before, but I want our listeners to hear this wonderful story.
Well, I mean, there are many layers to this, so I hope I'll be consistent in what you know. So the real career started for me in the early 90s. So I had a manager who was the record label at the time, who was the editor, the publisher. So he was like the one shop stop, right? And so I was really green. I started with him, and we did a lot of French translation of American music, American songs, and we did it in French. And
just to give our listeners context really quickly, this was in Canada, correct?
I was going to say, this is in Canada. So the first album was a French album, and that's how I started doing some. Although the album had some Spanish song it had a couple of Spanish songs, I think, in it, and then and 2 or 3 English songs. But the main core of the album was French, because the audience that was targeted was the French audience, and then it did cross over Canada, but Canada has a French community in the province of Quebec, so that's where I come from. I was born in Montreal, and so it certainly made sense for me at the time to do that. And it was interesting because, as I mentioned earlier, background in music came from Grandma, but so with classical. But then my mom was a fan of gospel, and she was a fan of country music, and my dad was a fan of Elvis. So I kind of grew up with different genres. So the first album was a country album, and but that's probably what got me to the point where I said, "Oh my gosh, we started selling a lot of albums. We got a platinum album with the first one, so it was quite a blessing." And then it just moved on. I mean, there's a story behind
now,
each layer, right?
Yeah, so, I agree. And you ended up meeting with Celine Dion's manager. How did that happen?
So that's actually just a little before I met the manager that I signed with and made a record with. I was at one of the award in Canada called A Disc. It's kind of the French version of the Grammys, and I was not nominated because I hadn't done any music at the time. But I was invited to be, to attend the ceremony, and then after there was an after party, and somehow I got to the after party, and Celine Dion at the time was nominated for 4 awards, in which she won I know she, at least, I don't remember she won the 4 of them, but she won the Best Female Vocalist of the Year. So I ended up at that party, and Renee Angelil, which was her husband, so I got to meet him, and I told him, what I was doing, and he was just a cool guy. He just loved artists, because he was an artist first. So he had, he would pay attention when somebody talks to him. He gave them all the attention they required. So he was really, really unusually nice with artists. And so he invited me to his home, and I performed, and I was going to sign with Renee Angelil, which was the biggest, the most known manager at the time in Quebec. And somehow it didn't quite work, because Celine now started to cross over, and she became, we're talking early 90s, I think it's 92. And she became so big that he just focused on her. But he did say to the manager I worked after, he said, "Take this kid," because I was a kid at the time. He said, "This kid's a winner." So he did have a few nice things to say, right? So it was what launched a career, I would say.
So, you became really successful yourself, and you were selling lots and lots of albums. Was there a fall after that?
There was a huge one. It was a huge one, because I was extremely green when I started. The only thing I knew is I wanted to sing. So I certainly wasn't a businessman and how to handle the success. I was working, basically doing a show, almost 200 shows a year. And if it was not doing a show, we were on the radio or interview on television or something. So there was always something going on. So I kind of didn't know what was happening at the same time. And so I sold a lot of records, but not made a lot of money. If that's what you're leading to.
Yes.
So, yes.
How is that? If you're selling a lot of records, doesn't mean that you're making a lot of money?
Well, naturally, if you have a brain, yes. but obviously I was really green, and I just didn't know much about that and that part. I just knew that for me it was a dream come true. I could get to perform on stage for thousands of people, and
you were fully trusting your manager to handle everything.
Well, I didn't know anything else, right? So I was very young, so I didn't know anything else.
Right.
So of course I did. So, but in 97, towards the year 97, the contract terminated, and we were supposed to go to France with this guy, and then finally I did not renew. And a lot of things happened, man. I don't think this is intended to tell the whole story, because
right.
there's so, like I said earlier, so many layers. But I ended up in Nashville, Tennessee. Interesting enough, after selling hundreds of thousands of CDs, I ended up in Nashville, Tennessee, sleeping in my car.
Because you were broke.
Because I couldn't afford a hotel.
Right.
I would go there maybe once a week, and then I would shower at the YMCA. And
wow.
So, but I got to meet a lot of interesting people in Nashville, and I was working with some cool people, but no one knew what was going on, really, because I just I didn't talk to anybody about that I was sleeping in my car at the time.
Right.
So.
No, I do you think that helped you, or do you think if you had shared that information, hey guys, I'm homeless, I need some help, do you think it would hurt you or help you?
It's like I said earlier, somebody with a brain would have done something maybe differently than I did, but I guess it was my path, Marty. I think I grew up in a very religious, as a child, my parents were strong Baptists, and so I grew up with the fear of the Lord, there's no doubt. But it's interesting, for me, I found God outside the church, and I found God when I was living in my car. That's when I had an intimate relationship with got to know more who God is. I would say it's an intimate relationship that you develop. So for me, it was interesting because I didn't find my relationship with God in the church, but outside of the church. But so I guess in my path it was needed. I think I became a better performer after that because I had more of a story to tell. So you become a better singer because you could feel. You feel what's going on, right? So you become the words of what you're singing. And at the time, I was working with Donna Summer in Nashville.
Wow.
I was part of their album that they had. One of my buddy, well, that became a buddy of mine, and I still work with him today. His name is Gillis. Was producing an album for the Special Olympics, and so they had artists like Donna Summer. Leanne Rhymes, a bunch of country acts as well.
Wow.
And so I ended up recording a few songs with Donna Summer's husband, which is Bruce Sodano, who's the producer, the one that wrote Bad Girl, all the big hits with Donna Summer. And then I'd work with them and then go back in my car, right? So it was an interesting time for me.
Right. So I know that you also write your own music. You produce also. Now, what inspires you to write?
You write by what you're inspired. So there's an interesting song. It's not a song that I wrote. The song is called "Sometimes It Rains," and sometimes it rains. And that was recorded during the years I was in Nashville, living in my car. As I said earlier, when you live through certain difficulties, then you become more rooted in what you're supposed to do, and you have more of a story to tell. So the song "Sometimes It Rains" was never released, but it's something that I felt, that I really felt every word of it because I was living them. And interesting enough, like almost, I would say, almost 20 years later, I re-released the song
Wow.
on a TV special called My Shining Hour to just remember. And when I remember the moment, the hungry years, I call them. And then when I tried to sing the song again, I couldn't get in that place for some reason. And so we used the old vocal from 1998, and today's technology, we re-recorded the music around it.
Wow.
So we used the old performance. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but you were talking about, right, what inspires you. Well, that song I didn't write, but it certainly felt like it's one of my songs.
So
because I was living it.
Let's go to some of your music, and we're going to listen to one, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. Let's listen to Awesome.
I think you do have Sometimes It Rains in the song.
Oh, do I? Okay, so let's start with Awesome, and we'll talk about that. Let's listen to Awesome.
Judging me for my choice, robbing me for my joy. It ain't right. Please don't think it personal. It's just not optional. I'm declaring a sign to be free. No more feeling of sadness. Fill up with gladness. Ain't wasting time. Cause life is beautiful. I feel awesome. Makes me wanna shout and say, I am beautiful. I feel awesome.
Wow, that was an incredible song. Tell me how that came about.
Well, Awesome came. It was a song that I wrote for a TV special called My Shining Hour, and it really didn't fit the special. It was very different because the song is pop, and it just didn't feel what I was going for the special. But I liked the song, and I didn't want to give it up. And then all of a sudden, a friend of mine sent me by email a letter from a young boy. I think he was 14. His name was Daniel, I believe. He had committed suicide due to bullying. And I thought, how bad does it have to be for a child that young to take his life because of bullying? And then all of a sudden I remembered, as a kid I was bullied, and so I said, well, I still didn't comprehend, why today? Because we were bullied as kids, but no one would take their life for it, right? So, or at least we didn't hear about it.
Right.
But today it's becoming now the highest cause of suicide for young children under 14, which is the suicide is being caused by bullies. So I thought, what can I do to help that? That's really, and then the song Awesome started now to make sense, because the song is focused on reminding each other that we are awesomely made. There's always something unique about each of us. There's something that talks about basically that we need to celebrate the differences. We need to celebrate who we are. We're not a mistake. And so that actually led me to a whole new lane, because I became now more determined to talk about the danger of bullying. And then, but I used this song as a platform to launch a nonprofit called Why I Count, Why I Matter, Why I Count, to remind the young generation that they are awesome. There's something about them that is, when the more I dig into it and realize in what I've found, the science, even the science behind the creation is just mind-blowing. Like the largest computer, for instance, the largest computer in the world is called the Japan K. It's about the size of 3 of my house, right? So it's a big, big, big computer. And it takes 40 minutes for that computer to record 1 second of your brain's activity. So thinking about all this, I said, well, you know what, I'm going to use this song as a platform and then hopefully educate kids in school and about what's inside of them and what's so amazing about them and how awesome they are. So that's really what became the song. It actually birthed.
That's awesome. That's
the
awesome.
Organization. Now, certain things will happen like this. You don't plan them; they just happen.
Right, right. Now let's go back to the song that you had mentioned earlier. Sometimes it rains. What is the true message behind that when people are listening to this music?
Well, it's still a message of hope. Because it does rain, and we do have a problem. We're facing it today more than ever, right? I've never thought in my thoughts ever that we would see so much division in the United States.
In the world, really.
In the world, really, it's worldwide. So we know that evil is loose, so there's no doubt. And but sometimes we're going through seasons, and right now it's a season for all of us because we're all in the same boat here. And so sometimes it rains, but then there's always a glimpse of hope at the end, and I think that's what we need to cling to, because if that's what the song really represents. There's a shift, through the storm. There's a lot of cleansing happening as well. So it's not all bad. Like for instance, when I was living in my car, I could say, well, you know what? I sold hundreds of thousands of CDs and I'm stuck in my car. But it wasn't all bad because I at that time, looking with a different perspective, I became a better artist, a better performer, a better person. And like I said, I got to know, to have a relationship with God. And so a lot of great things happen at I would say, the darkest time of my life, right? So, and that's what the song represents, and that's why it was difficult to re-sing it. I don't know if I wanted to relive it, but at the same time,
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I said, well, you know what? I didn't want to be lazy and say, let's not do it. But I said there was such a raw, organic emotion there that it was hard to duplicate.
Right. Okay. Well, let's listen to it.
You've been destined for a change in the weather. Walk this rocky terrain, feel your heart of stuff is leather. There's no sign in the sky above you that anyone's gonna come and love you and take away your heartache and pain. But sometimes it rains, and sometimes it falls. Sometimes an angel comes knocking at your door. Though it's hard to tell through a long dark spell that the clouds above forever gonna rain. 'Cause sometimes it rains. Sometimes it rains, sometimes it pours, sometimes an angel comes knocking at your door. Though it's hard to tell through a long dry spell that the clouds above forever gonna break. 'Cause sometimes it
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a powerful song. I really enjoyed it, and I know our audience will enjoy it as well. And which brings me to another song we're going to listen to that you wrote recently for a film. It's called Silence. Let's listen.
silence invading my heart, dreams that were shattered. If I leave this world tonight, would it really matter? I don't know how to right the wrong, and don't know where I belong. It's all in my head, they say.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, how did that one come about?
Well, this is a song part of the movie "Don't Say My Name," and which deals about sex trafficking. And I do believe the more I work in bullying, I believe that a lot of traffic victims have something in common, which is they've all been bullied. And so basically, you know, the song really reflects a person, because I've worked with a lot of different organizations. Through my organization, we've worked with organizations that rescues women for sex trafficking, and you get to interview the rescued victim, and it's really, really interesting to see that they have been reprogrammed, rewired in their brain, and so the work that has to be done for those rescued victims is tremendous, and it's a never-ending battle, because they've been reprogrammed. And so the song really reflects the thought of living in silence in a way that even though you may have been rescued, or you may be right in the middle of the fire now at this moment, but there's still some major scars that are left, and that's what the song deals about, you know. But try to bring always a glimpse of hope at the end, because without hope we have nothing, right? but that's really what the song deals with, the internal battle that a person goes through, and then you can identify that too. Obviously, this was written for the purpose of the sex trafficking victim. For the movie, Don't Say My Name, but I think we all have some scars in us that we need to deal with. And so I think the song speaks to that.
Awesome. So while we are in this subject, there's another song. It's called Amazing Grace. Let's listen. Wow, I mean, your songs are absolutely beautiful, Steph. Where can people get your music? Where can they follow you? And where can they support your organization? Because you're doing quite a bit.
Well, we have this nonprofit called Why I Count. It spells with a Y, icount.org. So they can follow a little bit of the classes that we're due through this. Now, with COVID, we're becoming slowly more interactive, because I used to do a lot of schools, and now we're actually recording videos, which, by the way, Marty, I'll send you the latest one we did on that.
Yeah.
But also StephCarse.com. If you go to StephCarse.com or follow me on Facebook, all the social medias. I mean, music is, it's a whole different world, right? So there are no more records anymore. Everything is streamable. So if you go to my channel on YouTube, it's youtube.com/Steph Carse TV.
Or they could just Google Steph Carse and everything will pop up, right?
Yeah. Well, Steph STEPH.
Correct. Now, I have two more questions before we end. What is the biggest lesson you've ever learned?
Whoa, the biggest lesson, I don't know. I think we're learning every day. I mean, this is so new season that we're learning. The biggest lesson is that when you think you figured it out, you really haven't figured it out. So I think that's the biggest lesson for me. Meaning that, the whole journey is about to learn to be out of your way. And I wrote a song about this called Healing River. The more, we're all battling with ourselves, right? So it's to learn to get yourself out of the way. And I think that's the constant battle. I certainly still go through that all the time, and I talk with my wife. It's something that we certainly have in common. We have to get ourselves out of the way.
Right. So
that we can be useful and bring some light here.
Right.
And so I think that's, for me, it's always, I mean, if I would say that I've learned something, is I'm learning, and I'm tapping with the idea of getting myself constantly. It's a minute-to-minute decision.
Right.
Get out of the way. Get out of your way and just do what you're supposed to do, right?
Right.
Without overthinking, stop reasoning, and just go for it.
I hear you. And last question, what is the best advice you've ever been given?
Well, they're very intertwined, what I just said. So that's probably, an advice was given to me about that. And once I get an understanding of this, best advice is stop reasoning. I think reasoning is paralyzing. And so reasoning would slow down my work. I'm not saying that to be completely mindless, because when I was mindless completely when I was young, you know where it led me. But the reasoning is also something sometimes that's paralyzing, because while you're balancing everything out, then you might miss an opportunity that's right in front of you. So sometimes things have to be organic and they have to be in the moment, because when the door of opportunity opens, you got to be ready to go and walk through it.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, the reasoning is slowing the process.
Right. Steph, man, we can talk all day. I wish we had so much more time, because you have so much more in you, so much more to say. I urge everyone listening, go follow him, listen to his music, support his organization, because it is an incredible thing that he's doing. Steph, I can't thank you enough for being a part of this show. I'm sure we will talk again.
Thanks, Marty. Thank you, brother.
Are you looking for a safe environment to watch movies and shows? Well, look no further. 24 Flix is your answer. You can watch thousands of movies, TV shows, without ever worrying about sexual content, nudity, or offensive language. You can get started with a free 2-week trial with 0 obligations. Watch on your mobile device, on your smart TV, anytime, anywhere. Sign up today on your smart device or go to www.24flix.com, the home of unlimited family entertainment.